All right, Dalton, another two teams we're talking about here, another ACC versus SEC game that we're talking about here is South Carolina taking down Clemson 17-14. Number 15 South Carolina beating number 12 Clemson. Let's go over the highest graded players from what was a very, very fun game. Starting off with the Gamecocks and TJ Sanders, their defensive tackle, 74.4 grade. Alex Huntley, another D tackle, 74.1. Nick Manwari, the safety, 72.4. O'Donnell Fortune, 72.1. Tonka Hemingway, 70.7, as it's been almost all year for South Carolina. Their 5 highest graded non-quarterbacks all came from the defensive side of the football, but Lenora Sellers, we'll talk about in a little bit, 73 grade in the victory for the Gamecocks. Go over to Clemson with their highest graded players in their loss. Starting off with edge defender TJ Parker, 78 grade. Linebacker Sammy Brown, 74 grade. Safety RJ Micken, 70.7. Offensive tackle Blake Miller, 69.8. Wide receiver Antonio Williams, 64.7. And Kay Klubnik rounding it out at quarterback with a 73.6 grade. Dawn, for you, the stat told story in what was a really, really fun game between these two teams.
Well, I know all our Gamecock fans out there want to hear me talk about Lenora Sellers, and that's what we're going to do. Okay, here's the thing. Coming into this game, Sellers was grading 10 points higher against the blitz than against a standard rush, than against a four-man rush, right? So, naturally, Clemson decided to come in and blitz him half the time. On half of his dropbacks, they blitzed him, which is a very, very high rate. Lenora Sellers against the blitz, passing 6 for 11, 84 yards, a big-time throw, 71.2 passing grade. 3 scrambles among those dropbacks. 90 yards and a touchdown and a 90.8 rushing grade. The touchdown was his first one, actually. That was South Carolina's first touchdown in the second quarter. The second one came against a four-man rush, and there was a spy, and he just outran the spy because as a runner, he's a freak of nature. You're going to go more into that. But that was the part, and I think for me, the biggest improvement from Lenora Sellers lately, and for as much as I love Shane Beamer vouching for his guy, he is not the best player in the country yet, and he's not the Heisman Trophy favorite. That's not where we're at with Lenora Sellers, but he's definitely gotten better the second half of the season. He was the shakiest part of this team through the first 5 or 6 games, and now he's become a pretty stable force and a guy who I think is making better decisions under pressure and against the blitz when teams are trying to speed him up. I think he's done a good job of just making decisions that don't lose you ball games. I think he still has to work on a lot of things from the pocket, the ball security. He's got 3 turnover-worthy plays in this game, but as a runner, especially against the blitz, and even there was a few good throws where he got rid of the ball on time, that was the biggest thing for me. And I was a little surprised that Clemson, as the game went on, they kept challenging him, and I know there was times, and South Carolina's pass protection isn't great. They were getting free rushers at him. But he's, 6'5" and 240 and can really run? You're not going to tackle him with a slot corner, and that's what happened in this game. But Sellers against the blitz when he'd already been better against the blitz in a standard rush, and Clemson blitzing him on half of his dropbacks. I'm not really getting the logic there, but he found a way to beat it. And in an ugly game where they had to pull it out at the end, he was the biggest reason.
And biggest reason for that, Dawn, as a rusher, oh my God. What he did against Clemson as a rusher was historic stuff, literally. Dawn, he forced 18 missed tackles. 18 as a quarterback. The only player in the nation with more in a game this year was Ashton Jeanty when he broke 20 tackles against San Diego State earlier this season. So only Ashton Jeanty, who a lot of people think should win the Heisman Trophy, had more broken tackles in a game than Lenora Sellers. And for a quarterback, we've never seen this before. We have never seen in the PFF college era a quarterback break 18 tackles in a game, and we've been doing this since 2014. So we've seen guys like Lamar Jackson. We've seen guys like Marcus Mariota, like Kyler Murray, elite rushing threats at the quarterback position. None of them have done this before. Against Clemson as well. None of them have broke 18 tackles in a game. He had 171 rushing yards. 176 yards after contact. If you're wondering how on earth, I've gotten DMs from South Carolina fans saying, hey, I think you got your number wrong because he has more yards after contact than he has rushing yards. I'm like, nope, didn't get it wrong. He got hit in the backfield so much, and he broke out of it and made a magical play out of it. Dude, what he did was literally nothing else but magical. He was magical against South Carolina. I could not believe some of the runs he was pulling off out there. They had him dead to rights multiple times in that game for sacks. He broke out of it, juked a few guys out, and made a 25-yard gain. He was unfreaking believable. He averaged almost 12 yards after contact per carry. 12 yards after contact per carry for a quarterback, Dalton. I could not believe what Lenore Sellers did out there. His ceiling is so high. Yes, there is still stuff to clean up as a passer, but his ceiling going into next year as a redshirt sophomore is ridiculously high, dude. And what he did as a rusher in this game with 18 broken tackles, a new quarterback record for PFF against Clemson, insane. There's nothing else to say but insane from the North Sellers.
No, and the most impressive for me has to be Sellers, right? And there wasn't a lot of great offensively in this game from either side, right? It was ugly. Even Clemson's 2 touchdowns were Cade Klubnik rushing touchdowns. And I think what you had is you always want to find out in your quarterback if you have a guy who can will you to a win in a tough game like this on the road, in one of the toughest road environments to play in college football. And that's what they found out. I think they found it out in this game and in the Missouri game. I think these are the 2 big games for, South Carolina looking forward to the future. Well, we can debate their college football playoff standing all day long. We'll see if the committee feels like they can jump Alabama and be maybe a team that they get the last team in and all of that. But either way, it's been a wildly successful year. And you think about they're coming into this season with a bad offensive line. Their number 1 receiver got drafted, a freshman quarterback who played like 20 snaps last year or something. South Carolina offensively really didn't have anything to start with.
And one of their best receivers transferred to Ole Miss as well.
Yeah, Juice Wells went to Ole Miss. I mean, their top 2 receivers were gone, and they had no offensive line, and they're basically, we were like, okay, they have Sellers and they have Rocket Sanders, and I don't even know where this is going. But where it's going is that Lenore Sellers' development, and there's still a ways to go. He's not the best quarterback in the SEC yet. His development is going to be one of the biggest stories in the conference next year. Yeah. Because a guy who can do that, I think his skill set is very similar to Jalen Milroe. Yeah. Right now, I think it is. I think he can be that type of guy of that caliber, right? And that's the difference. Is he going to be somebody more like an Avery Johnson or a Kyron Drones? Or is he going to develop a little more as a passer and be a Jalen Milroe, or even more and be better than that and be a Heisman candidate, right? I think they have a guy they feel like they can do that with, and they have a defense with a boatload of talent and still some coming back. And this is one of the best defenses in college football. Let's not forget that. They held Clemson to 14 points in this game, and the only thing that Clemson had was Klubnik running the ball, right? Yeah. Sellers is going to be a big story. Is he all the way there yet? No, but the improvement in the second half is a big, big deal, especially as a passer and I think under pressure in his decision-making. Yeah. Even with Klubnik running the ball, my most impressive part is the South Carolina run D. I said in the preview, for Clemson to win this game offensively, they had to attack South Carolina's run D, which has been good, not great, whereas the coverage unit has been great. The pass rush has been great. Well, really, they tried, and South Carolina's run D stood tall in this one. 88.3 run defense grade as a team, negative .216 EPA per run. On 29 run defense snaps, they had 15 stops. So over half of the run defense snaps for South Carolina was a win for South Carolina. TJ Sanders, we mentioned before, is a highest grade player. He had 4 run defense stops in this game. And what's crazy was the pass rush for South Carolina wasn't really there. They had a 60.6 pass rushing grade as a team. That's the second lowest for them all year, trailing only ahead of the Alabama game where they lost that one. Their run defense, though, really did step up in this one. So the South Carolina run D, where I thought Clemson might be able to get a little bit of an advantage at, where there was no advantage to be had because South Carolina run D really stood tall and dominated this game. No, I agree with you. And what kept happening was they kept putting Clemson behind the chains, right? And you look at the design carries in this game, 29 design carries for 115 yards. That's good enough. Yeah. They'll take that all day long. So I think you're looking at a South Carolina team now that it's at least put itself in the conversation. I think if SMU beats Clemson in the ACC title, the way I was racking it up, I think the last spot goes to either Alabama or South Carolina. Yeah. And then it's a debate of resume and what have you done for me lately and recency bias versus Alabama did beat them head-to-head, even though it was by only 2 points and it went down to the wire.
Alabama beat Georgia, too.
I think, and they did beat Georgia, but the losses matter, too. And you look at South Carolina losing to LSU by a field goal with their backup quarterback, Alabama by 2, and they had a blowout loss to Ole Miss. Ole Miss just beat them. And Alabama lost to, Vandy and Oklahoma badly, and the third one was Tennessee, and they lost to Tennessee as well. So the entire resume would say, well, it's maybe a coin flip.
Yeah, it is.
South Carolina with the head-to-head might need it to be a little more than a coin flip, though. I think the committee would lean in on Alabama, but South Carolina's got a really good case if the last spot came down to those two teams.
Would you give it a South Carolina? My answer's coming up soon, by the way, because I do have an answer for that.
But it's so hard. I think I would.
Okay.
Because of Alabama's losses, losing to a 6-6 Vandy and losing the Oklahoma loss to me
It's horrible.
is the bad one. When you consider South Carolina dominated Vandy, South Carolina dominated Oklahoma.
Yeah.
They have the A&M win. They have the Clemson win now. I know the Georgia win's the big one. But I think South Carolina's resume is better than a lot of people think, and their losses, when you look into it, other than the Ole Miss loss, and by the way, I know that head-to-head is the thing, South Carolina should absolutely be ahead of Ole Miss.
Yeah.
After this win. Absolutely, they should be ahead of Ole Miss. For me, the Alabama one is the question. Because Alabama, even when they played South Carolina, they didn't look great in that game.
No, they won by 2.
They won by 2 points, and South Carolina had the ball with a chance to win. I think it was in Tuscaloosa, too.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If Bama had beaten them by like 14, I'd be like, okay, we're done here. But
yeah.
I think South Carolina's resume is kind of underrated, and I don't think it should be just some non-consideration of that.
No, it's definitely consideration. Hey, thanks for watching another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel.
Also, subscribe to PFF Plus at subscribe.pff.com for all of the same data and grades that we use in our show, plus fantasy tools, betting tools, and our mock draft simulator.